And I was like, you know what? I have never been to Australia. And the only commercials I've seen is amazing beaches, beers, and a great life. Great weather. Cut to, I'm in Melbourne in July. Nobody talks about that. I landed at 11 p.m. or something. Fortunately, Monash had booked a taxi for us, whoever enrolls at Monash, and then they picked me up. But it's freezing. It's like 2 degrees or something. And I was like, what am I going to do with all those surfing pages and all the dreams that I saw for myself? And that was one shock that I had.
What's up, Global Horizons podcast? I'm your host, Rob Malicki, coming to you today from Wurundjeri country in Melbourne. We're on the land of the Kulin Nation. And I'm joined today by Devarshi Desai, who is an epic dude in the industry. 100,000 plus YouTube subscribers, massive online community, and genuinely one of Australian International Educators' original Edfluencers on YouTube. Dev, thank you for joining me on Global.
Thank you so much for having me.
And
just on that note, I love the work that you're doing. I've been following your podcast, and thanks for doing all the hard work, because we rely on you for all these interesting stories and news. So great job.
So good to have you here. I'm like super excited. So I'm also on YouTube, got a decent following. But when I first got into YouTube, you were literally the first dude that I found out there. And you've got a bit of an unconventional story, right, to have ended up where you are.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Awesome. I'll start from starting. So have been in Australia for over 7 years now. Doesn't feel like it. Feels like I came here yesterday. But main thing is that I came here July 2017. So that was the first time ever I am studying internationally. Have no idea what Australia is going to bring. Have no idea what my life is going to be here. And when I came here, I was just like this 23-year-old dude who just wants to explore, right? That was the main thing. And I think one thing that I keep doing even today is just try and explore new things, because what's the worst going to happen? It won't work, but the experience would be so great, right? And that's something that I want more and more international students to do as well. And that is what keeps me going. You know, it's like telling people, just like follow different things. Do your duties. If you have to get a part-time job, get a part-time job. If you have to make money or, even send money home, that's your duty. Fulfill that, but also try and follow your passion. So yeah. Going back to the story, came here July 2017. 6 months into the country, one of the things that I realized was there is a dream that is being sold across the world of what our life is going to be. That dream includes a lot of true things, but it has some elements which may not be as true. And that was not just my experience. When I talked to hundreds and thousands of international students, I felt the same way. And what I wanted to do was, I wanted to put my story out there and tell people what the reality is. And reality is beautiful. Because it comes with its ups and downs. And that's how 6 months, 8 months into the country, I was like, okay, let me put my story out there. And that's how I started YouTube. And just very simple how-to videos. How does public transport work in Melbourne? Because that was something that I had no idea about. How to get a part-time job in Australia as an international student. Or what are the minimum wages? And what are some of the easiest jobs to get? So stuff like that. And didn't know where it would end up. But it ended up becoming one of the largest YouTube channel within the sector. It's called Internash, because international. And, we're sitting here, 100,000 subs, 6, 7, 8 million views later, and have got the following on bunch of other platforms as well now.
When did you realize it was blowing up?
That's a great question. I love stats. I love to see how many views I'm getting every hour. And it is not healthy. I see that now. But one thing is that if I get into something, I'm just going to dive in 100% in it and just learn as much as I can. So when I started creating content, I wasn't getting views. Obviously, that's how everybody starts. That one thing that worked for us, and that I tell every content creator to do, is see what is already working in your content niche and try and make something better than what already exists. So for example, one of the videos that did really well was Melbourne versus Sydney. And I had no idea what Sydney was like. So I called up my friends who were in Sydney and said, hey, tell me more about it. right? I want to know. I want to be subject expert first before I tell someone anything. And that video did well because it was already something searchable on YouTube. And I was like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. So then next 10 videos were, what is something that people are looking for? Where can I add value? What is my unfair advantage? And I'm going to add value there. So once I started doing that, then videos started doing well. Within first year, we had about 30,000 subscribers. And
which, for context, that's massive. You know, it's because it's such a slow burn getting the first couple. Yeah. And I mean, it's a slow burn. Definitely. To get to 30,000 is huge.
Yeah. And without knowing anything, right? Without knowing anything about the industry as well. So, for example, when I was making these videos, I did not know that there is this massive $40 billion industry that exists. Because think about this. It's like a 23, 24-year-old guy into the country, doing part-time job, making pizzas, studying Masters of Business at Monash, and making videos and hanging out with friends. That's my life. When will I learn about the industry? So I knew nothing about this. And then slowly and gradually, who are these people who run universities? Who are these people who run insurance companies or have media channels? And that is when I started learning about the industry. So it was, you know, this is something that I'm very proud of. But there was no single video which was like reached 10 million views. And that's where I got the followers from. It was time and again, just sheer hard work.
Showing up.
Yeah, just showing up every single week and putting something out there that I truly believe in that adds value to people.
What's interesting, and we've talked about this, you and I, in the past, is like you're a bit of an introvert, right?
Yeah.
And yet you're like this influencer guy with 100,000 plus subs.
Yeah.
How does that balance, man?
I would love to give a shout out to you actually because I gave you a call regarding this and before this conference I was like, how do I go and approach people? Like, what if people don't want to talk to me? You know, and that's a very real fear that sure. I had. And so that's the thing. But one thing which goes with a lot of content creators is that either we are talking to someone or we are talking to the camera. So immediate rejection is not there that we're going to have when we talk to people, if that is there.
Good point.
Yeah, so that is something that definitely helped me. And after some of your valuable suggestions, I'm actually in this conference, I'm going and talking to people that I don't know. And I realized that fear was more in my head than it was in the reality. So yeah, that's how I just wanted to add value and put my story out there.
That's a great way to put it, isn't it? I mean, because so many of us, I'm an introvert too, I think, in my heart. And for me to go out of my comfort zone to meet new people and talk to people is really uncomfortable. But just what you've said there is like the key. It's like, I'm here to add value.
Yeah.
I know I can help someone. I know I can contribute something to them that they won't otherwise have. That's kind of like the way to get over that hurdle. But, mate, the other thing that strikes me about you is you're such a hustling entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I really want to get to, like, study Internash, because these are fascinating organisations. But before we get there, where does the hustle come from?
I have actually thought about this quite a bit. And I think it just goes back to my parents. It's just upbringing, right? My parents have done well in their own ways. So that was one thing. And they run their own businesses as well. Whenever people talk about, it's like, oh, international student life is so hard and there's so much struggle involved in this life. I never fail to acknowledge that I did come with few privileges. If your parents, and this goes with every international student out there, right? If your parents are educated, if they could afford to send you to another country, which costs like $100,000 or more.
It's a bomb, yeah.
Yeah. Well, then we do come from a privileged background. And our upbringing, if we come from that upbringing, then I knew like that one thing is that we can build businesses. Not necessarily my parents build companies that have like hundreds of employees. Like, it's not something that probably they didn't want to do. They just wanted to work for themselves. And that's something that I learned. So definitely came from there. And one thing that was instilled growing up, that was try and solve problems and help people. If you're doing that, you're living a fulfilling life. So even when we go and look my content 5 years back, you'll never see me talking about, look at my life. Look at the car that I bought.
Yeah.
I'm not a vlogger. Yeah, I'm not a vlogger that I'm going to tell you, where do I live? Oh, I'm going to go to a party. Guys, do you want to see? No, I want to, every video that I have a hypothesis. I have arguments to that hypothesis. That hypothesis could be international students struggle in Australia because they cannot find jobs. That's a hypothesis. Then I drill into it with arguments that, okay, let's think about it. Why do we not get jobs? If I move, this is the example that I give. I'm from Ahmedabad. It's a city in India, second-tier city, not as big as Mumbai, Delhi, but fairly big. If I went to Delhi today, where I know nobody and my parents don't know anybody, then people are not just going to shower me with love or just offer me 50 jobs or make it easy for me. And it's my country. It's a country where I speak the language, Hindi. That is what's spoken in Delhi. And still, it's not going to be easy. Now I'm going to another country where people may have preconceived notions about how you look or where you come from, or they have had their experiences. Then how can we expect that it's going to be easy? That's number one. Okay, so it's not easy, right? That's the first thing that we establish. And then we get into, cool, now if it's not easy, then how do we solve this problem? So actually this goes to, I did law in bachelor's. So that is every legal argument we approach like this. And that's what I try and do with the problems that I want to solve or the videos that I want to create. So that's where it comes from.
So Dev, what was it like when you first arrived here then?
Okay, this is an interesting one. When you think about Australia, right? Everybody listening, whether you're from Australia or not, think of the commercial of this country, right? What are three things that you're going to see?
Koala, kangaroo, beaches.
Yeah. Beaches.
Yeah.
And it's always sunny.
Sunny, sunny, sunny. Of course.
Have we ever said winter in Australia in the same statement? Like,
well, we are in Melbourne.
Yeah.
But not overseas.
So then once I decided I'm going to Australia, I am following every surfing page that is out there. Right?
Love it.
And I was like, you know what? I have never been to Australia. And the only commercials I've seen is amazing beaches, beers, and a great life. Great weather. Cut to, I'm in Melbourne in July. Nobody talks about that. I landed at 11 p.m. or something. Fortunately, Monash had booked a taxi for us, whoever enrolls at Monash, and then they picked me up. But it's freezing. It's like 2 degrees or something. And I was like, what am I going to do with all those surfing pages and all the dreams that I saw for myself? And that was one shock that I had. And then the next thing was that, cool, now a couple of months into the country, trying to find a job. As I mentioned, I used to practice law. And I used to work in this litigating firm, wearing suit, the lawyer gown, going to the high court. And now the job that I got was making pizzas and picking up phone calls, right? So the struggle was the identity that I had of myself. I had to rebuild that identity. And I'm so grateful I did that. It's not just that. Then another job that I had, again, I think this is like 2 months into the country, so still it was like August, September, which is still freezing in Melbourne. And I had to distribute pamphlets. So I had to stand out of the store, and my job is to distribute pamphlets. This is like on Flagstaff Station, near Flagstaff Station. And I'm wearing like 6 layers. Because where I come from, even 40 degrees is fine with me, right? That's what I grew up with. So just the identity of myself was another struggle. But just in general, the person that I am, I want to take the struggles that come to me head on. So I think those are some of the things. And then another thing is that if, for example, you come to India today, I cannot expect my people of my country to treat me the same way they treat you. Not because they have anything against you, but you're just a new entity to them. And this is, we forget where racism comes from. A lot of times it is just newness, and people are not intentionally trying to be rude to you, but they're just uncertain. And this is that people don't even realize that they're uncertain. And I am also in my shell. I hope that, these people from different parts of the world, they treat me correctly. So I am not my best. They don't know about me. And these things can sometimes be hard. And I think a lot of the bad experiences that people have, if we go really into detail, some of them definitely have malice, but a lot of them may not have malice behind it. It's just the uncertainty of a new person from a new country who speaks differently, looks slightly different, as well. So I have had few of those experiences. But again, chin up, head up, let's go.
Yeah, I agree with that. As you were talking, I was thinking, maybe tell me about a time where you had one of those, like, what the hell am I doing here moments. Because I imagine you had a few.
Yeah, I had a few. And one of the, very briefly I mentioned, that was I was receiving calls at the pizza store and then making pizzas. That was my job.
Yeah.
The boss comes and how when somebody orders pizza, we get a receipt that's for the company or for the pizza shop, and then another is the customer receipt. So the process that I built for myself was I would do that and then I would put customer copy aside. The boss comes like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm putting customer copies here. It's like, who asked you to do that? If they're not asking it, you don't do this. This is my shop. This is my company that I do. And I was like, okay. I was just in shock because they were rude. I don't know. They might be having a bad day. I definitely wasn't this aware back then. I took it onto myself and I was like, am I doing something wrong? So that was a little bit hard. And because I had never done a necessarily similar customer facing job ever.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. Also, few incidents here and there in Melbourne streets that you can encounter if somebody's drunk, they're not too nice to you. Fortunately, nothing major happened to me, but happened to some people who were close to me. But again, I always go back to the core of it and see what is the fundamental problem here.
Yeah.
And is there something that I personally can do to change? And a lot of those things and that rational thinking is reflected in the content that I do, whether it's for the companies within international education or just to enlighten the audience or to tell the audience what life really is like here.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because when we've got a human being in front of us, we always see them in the context in which we see them. So, this boss in the pizza shop is just like, oh, you're just a student making pizzas.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even have in the faintest idea that you're this lawyer in front of the High Court. You know what I mean? And yet this is you as a human being. Yeah. And I think that's such a lesson that we all need to take so much to heart. Every single person, we're here at the AIEC conference, but every single one of those people out there on the floor today have got that unique story behind.
That is true.
And we shouldn't assume that just because they're doing one thing right now, that it's always been that way, or that they're wedded to that. You got to be so careful.
Is always going to be that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so let's jump forward, mate. So you've started this YouTube channel. Boom, it starts blowing up.
Yeah.
And suddenly Internash is like a thing. And I think I met you in person for the first time. I think we chatted a little bit maybe online at some point. I'll be very honest too, because I wanted to start building my YouTube channel. Yeah. It started kind of growing organically. You know what I did? I went and looked at all the titles of your videos. I'm just like, I'm going to, like, if it worked for Dev, like, surely I can try and make some videos. Yeah. And none of them did anywhere near as well as your versions, which is just awesome. But we had this like really nice interaction. I remember you saying to me, I want to build a really successful big business here.
Yeah.
And, you had this thing that's kind of blowing up. So let's talk about Internash and where that's gone.
Can I just take a little segue?
Yeah, please.
So actually, I had come across your videos before we had a chat, because again, as I said, I love to know everything that happens here in the industry, right? And just the research. And one thing that I loved was you would actually go to the university and shoot videos.
Yeah.
You would do a tour as well. And mine was point to shoot, sitting in my room doing the videos, right? So I was actually taking inspiration from you. And I have done a couple of videos going at the university because I saw yours.
Awesome. I love it. it.
Yeah. So
it's kind of cool when you meet other creators, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all looking for inspiration.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here's this dude, Devin, like he's doing these great videos and they're blowing up. And so I'm trying to like take some of those ideas and put my spin on it. And then you're doing the opposite. And we're all just trying to add value for the world.
And
it's
learn.
Awesome. Yeah, and learn.
Okay, coming back to Internash. Yeah, so...
And sorry, I should just say, it's not even just Internash now. Like, once again, mate, you're prolific. Internash, onto Study Nash. Hit me. Like, where are you at?
Okay, so the videos start doing well. We start creating content, going to, a lot of companies started to approach us. And what do I know, right? Like, genuinely, I had no idea about that somebody would want to pay me for content. It's very normal thing now when we are sitting in 2024 that people do want to pay for content. However, when I'm talking about 2018, 19, 20, it wasn't necessarily a thing. Content creators weren't making the money that they're making now. So companies start to approach me. And then for the longest time, I didn't know what to charge, how much to charge. So I would be like, oh, you want a YouTube video? I'll go and create a YouTube video for you. Do you want an Instagram post? I'll go and create an Instagram post. If I meet people in the industry, I'll go and tell that, hey, I'm a YouTuber. Do you want a YouTube video? And for the longest time, people didn't understand in the industry that, YouTube video has a lot of value in it. Or there's 100,000 people going to see when he creates content. It was a new concept for them as well. So one thing that I focused on was how can I create a community of international students? And one thing that I wanted was that more events and international students to have a great experience when they're here in Australia, because that's what I wanted. Everything that I've done, whether it's Internash, StudyNash, it's something that I wanted as an international student, and I decided how can I make it better for other people. That's where it comes from. So we started creating content for a bunch of companies, and also we did events. Then I got to know that Study Melbourne actually does a lot of events. And then somebody introduced me to someone at Study Melbourne. And then we were like, hey, we could help you do these events as well. We already have the community. We can help you with the engagement, bunch of other things. And they were like, okay, this is cool. So then we ended up working with Study Melbourne. And that was really cool for me. Again, few years into the country, getting a chance to work with state government, and you're just graduate as an international student, barely know anything. So that was a cool thing for me. And I didn't necessarily have a path that I could follow because nobody else had done that. There was no YouTuber trying to approach someone trying to build a business. So I'm just exploring. And there's so many walls that I have hit, right? Because first of all, I need to introduce myself because they have also not seen a YouTuber before, right? They're
That's so true, isn't it?
Yeah, so they just wouldn't understand what I'm trying to do or the value that I can bring. But few people did understand and few people did give me chance. And then we worked with Austrade, and they wanted to create content during the time of COVID, how international students are actually adding value in the Australian community, being the frontliners, working for Australian people and the country. And that was something that we did with Austrade. And suddenly I'm like, oh, cool. I think something is happening here. It's working. However, I still couldn't crack where should I go next. I'm just trying to figure out, talking to a few other people who have been in the industry. And then again, the question is, what is the problem that I want to solve? And the problem that I want to solve is I want to add more transparent information to international students so that they can take the right decisions, whether to study in Australia, where to study in Australia, and if they are already here, what to do once they are here. That is one thing that I always want to solve. So cut to now, Internash has turned into a media agency where we are helping a lot of businesses manage their social media, paid social media and marketing. So that is one thing that we are good at. That is one thing that we know how to authentically represent a business that the way people want to see. Even today, let's talk about few governments, right? And this is across the world. They would want to publish blogs. And they're like, we have written this thing and it is specifically for international students. Now, if it is for the industry, it makes sense. It makes complete sense. However, international student, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, not necessarily want to go to a government website to read blog, but they do want to see a reel. So how do we translate that content into a reel the way students want to consume? And that's what we do. That's what we help our clients do as well.
It's such a different approach, isn't it? I think, when we look at social media, there's all this froth around things blowing up on TikTok, and this kind of impression like we need... a piece of social content isn't successful if it hasn't had 1 million views and gone viral. And so much of the industry is kind of like chasing this thing, which, let's face it, like 1 million views on your cat video doesn't mean anyone's going to be more attached to your brand or is going to come and buy from you or whatever else. And that's very different to this kind of approach that you've been taking over many years, which is this sort of slow burn, add value, nurture the community, give them what they want, answer their questions, support. That long-term, valuable brand building. I mean, it's important. Like, the real stuff is really important too, but the context in which you do that is utterly critical. And it's a learned skill, isn't it? You don't just pick that up off the floor.
Yeah, I think it is. As I told you, there's so many walls that I kept hitting, and that was one thing that I want to encourage the industry to do, is to just try and give more chance to the newcomers. right? And that is one thing. I'm so grateful to people who gave me a chance, because even I am trying to figure stuff out. I'll give you an example. There was one of the state government, not Study Melbourne, there was someone else that I wanted to work with. And I sent them a proposal. First of all, nobody teaches you how to make a proposal, right? If you think about it, it's so important, but nobody really tells you what to do, how to do it, how to structure it. Okay, I figured it out, and then I sent it. And I didn't get the contract. I didn't get any work from them. And then I was like, hey, can I get a feedback? Like, I'm trying to do here. I really don't know. And they said that actually we found a typo in your proposal, and that just puts us off. So
Stop. Yeah.
We didn't want to work with you. And I never, in my wildest dream, imagined that one spelling mistake will cost me thousands of dollars, and just like an opportunity, And I think somewhere, like from the industry, from the government, they are right. They're like, we only want to work with the best and the best, right? But where do newcomers come? How can we train them? If somebody has been in the industry for 20 years and they're like, if you're not the best, I don't want to work with you, who is going to help them become the best? And I think it's one thing to think that, oh, I'm giving a job to newcomers, right? Okay, you're giving a job, but there is this another bunch, a lot smaller bunch, who wants to make something of themselves. And I think one thing that I've struggled with is just, hitting the walls, learning. So then one thing that I learned was, cool, now I need to make sure that there are no typos in my proposals. Another thing that I learned was I would send someone an email, and in my head, I don't want to approach them for like next 7 or 10 days because I don't want to bother them. Who am I to them? Nobody. Like, I don't want to bother them. And another feedback that I got was, well, you're not even serious because you're not taking regular follow-ups. And I was like, wow, I didn't know these things, right? And there's nobody here to, like, if you're in a job, you have a manager to teach you. But if you're trying to do something of your own or make something of your own, there's nobody like necessarily telling you these stuff. So again, it's part of the job. I'm not complaining or anything, but these are the things that I learned. And it's my sincere request to the industry that there are a lot of students trying to do stuff. I know so many who were trying to do things and just didn't work out for them because they didn't have somebody to teach them. So yeah,
that comes back to me. Like hits home for me. When we were starting our first business, we had some people that really supported us. And I was just a young guy.
Yeah.
Starting my first business with my wife.
Yeah.
There was no reason for them to trust me, but they did.
Yeah.
And that helped us to crack it. And, now we are where we are. We've been really successful in the industry. And I think about being here at a conference like AIEC, and in some ways you've got some amazing senior people who are really generous and walk around and they introduce you to people, but very much people just kind of stick to their own bubbles in these sorts of things. And I always try to really think about that if I've just met someone today, first time, their first AIEC. I just said, well, if I can introduce you to anyone, like, happy to do so.
Yeah. And that's what you offered me as well.
Right?
This is my first AIEC. And that's when we had a chat. I was like, hey, I really don't know what to do here. And then you actually gave me certain pointers. And then I was like, oh, cool. At least I know something that I'm going to do. And that's helping me today.
Yeah. Anyway, if you're listening, just always help out that person who's new to the room.
Yeah.
Whether they're new from overseas, it's their first time at the conference, it's their first time walking into your office for the first time, just be that person. To put your hand out and be like, what can I do for you?
Absolutely.
Because honestly, what I found in my career, maybe you've probably found the same, Dan, is like, that comes around, doesn't it? You help 100%. Somebody and it comes back around.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. So that's what. And then very recently we figured out that one thing that we're good at Internash is that we can actually help businesses reach audience the right way. Rather than me telling them, it's like, oh, upload 3 blogs. But what is your ROI on their blogs? How many people are reading and retaining and having an impression of your brand? And I think that is where we are really adding value through Internash.
And so what's StudyNash then?
Yeah, StudyNash. So that's a tech company that we have built. So going back to the main question that I keep thinking about, right? Which is, what is the value that I can add to our audience, or what are the problems that international students face? One of the problem is that helped our YouTube channel, which helped our content on multiple platforms and helps international students here, is just the transparent information, right? So now we decided that what StudyNash can do is that we can help you connect with international students before you come study here, right? So we built a tech platform. Fortunately, we also were able to raise some money from investors in Sydney, and they're global VC as well. And what we do is it's an edtech platform that connects students who want to study abroad with international students who are already here. And then also we can help them with their admission and if they need any migration support. So that is, again, going back to the same thing, which is like, what is the problem? The problem is that when I think of Australia or any other country, I may not know everything about it. What is the difference between Deakin University, Swinburne University, and RMIT University if you're someone who is sitting in a second-tier city abroad, right? And they're like, oh, I look at the fees. Well, some of the courses, fees are similar. I will look at the city. Well, all three of them are in Melbourne. I will look at the course structure. If it's MBA that we are looking at, if the course structure is going to be similar. So what is the difference? I can only know the difference if I go into detail and talk to students from all those universities. And that is really hard. I know a few universities are doing fabulous job at this. We wanted to allow students to try and make the difference as well. So that is what Study Nash does. And then we have turned that into our audience needed support for admission or for migration. That's something that just, when your audience calls for it, we just have to act on it. And that's what Study Nash does now.
Can I ask you about that venture capital, Rick? So I'm an entrepreneur. So as soon as you start, I'm just fascinated by the journey, right?
Yeah.
But that sounds terrifying to me.
Yeah.
You know, venture capital, and some people listening to this may have seen films or whatever about, you know,
Shark Tank,
start a Facebook.
Yeah.
What's that experience like, going out and, you know, hustling to raise money for an idea? Because you're pretty early, right? Like, you didn't have the platform when you...
Nah.
You're like, no.
Not even close.
For those people who are listening along, Dev's just like, you know, the eyes closed, you're just like shaking the head. No way.
Not even close. I think it's just learning about... Okay, so how international education is a whole world in itself, startup is a whole world in itself, right? It's like talking to other entrepreneurs and trying to build their own thing. And it's a very real thing. Out of 100, 90 businesses fail, 95 businesses fail, 5 succeed. And especially with startups, because we are trying to do something new. So I just got involved there. I did there's something called accelerator programs. So I did a lot of accelerator programs trying to get to know people. It's like, yo, how does this work? How does that work? And just one thing, this need to just try and do new things, I think that came handy. And then just started having building blocks. So did accelerator programs. What are these accelerator programs? Who runs it? There are these universities who run it. So my first accelerator program was at Monash. That was my introduction to entrepreneurship. Also, I was doing Masters of Business, and I got to know, and they told me that, oh, actually, when you are trying to build a business, there are these investors who want to invest in you because they want returns as well. And I was like, wait a minute, what? I mean, I didn't even think that was a thing. And now suddenly there are going to be people who want to give me money to build a business? Like, what? So that's a new thing, right? And I thought it just happens in TV shows for TRP. It's like, yo, Mark Cuban invested $4 million. Yeah, cool. But like, doesn't happen to me. Doesn't happen in real life, you know? And suddenly this happened. And then I was like, oh, cool. I'll go and meet different investors. And then just same thing, hitting walls again and again. Because for an investor, they're investing into a guy who is on a visa, don't know how long he's going to stay in the country, has an idea, but hasn't done anything before, also doesn't know how the Australian market works because he's new. So why are they going to give hundreds and thousands of dollars? It doesn't make sense. Also, the idea and everything wasn't polished. You know, at that time, I'm just trying. It's like, oh, this YouTuber wants money. We're not going to give him the money.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, he's like, oh, what does he do? He stands in front of a camera and then make videos. That's what he needs money for? Like, what is wrong with this guy? So again, just learning about these things, right? And once we start getting to know the industry, then you're like, oh, there are these venture capital firms, and their whole job is to find people who want to build business so that they can give them money, have equity in that business, and then help their investors and also the new businesses build. That's what we got into. We learned about all these things. We tested out different things. We approached, got 100 no's, not shying away from it now, but then ended up raising few $100,000.
What was that moment like? Talk me through that meeting when you're in the room and you're chatting with an individual or a group and you're pitching your idea.
It's terrifying because they are saving themselves from a failure potential, right? Which is like, we don't know whether this is going to succeed or not. I think one thing that came across was, it's just, this guy is going to hustle hard. I think that is what came through. If one thing doesn't work, he's not going to just give up. He's just going to do another thing and third thing and fourth thing and fifth thing. I think that came through pretty well. My co-founder the relations of co-founders matters as well. And obviously your co-founder was your partner, which is like pretty thick as it gets.
It is, man, yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's a friend, it's a very close friend that I knew back home who decided to study. Actually, he decided to study in Australia. And I was like, where are you going? Both of us were planning to go to the US. And he's like, no, Australia. This is 2017, so Trump had just came. And he's like, I'm going to go to Australia. And I was like, what? Like, we were going to go to the US. And I followed him. So obviously we were really close that I could trust him with my life decision.
Yeah.
And he was in the industry, international education. So he would coach me. He would tell me a lot of things. And so our relation was really strong. And this whole idea wasn't necessarily done the way we wanted to do. And we approached and they liked us when we got to know that, you know what, it's bam, that's how you get the money, right? It's like, it suddenly your bank account from minus 75 goes to like, it's like, wait, what happened? And that is, for me, it was surreal. I had just never seen that. That money or whatever. So yeah, I can say it was one of the happiest moments at that time. But funny thing is, it doesn't end there.
Oh no, it just starts.
Yeah, it starts there. And the way venture capital or even Shark Tank, the way it shows, it's like, oh, they got the investment. Okay, so what? Now you have to go and build the business. And yeah, it goes back to going and hitting the walls again. So that's where we are at, and that is where Internash at. Fortunately, we have had some great reviews, and we can see the difference we are making in the industry. So that is something that just helps us wake up every morning.
And it's the hunger, isn't it? I think that's the thing that really defines. To me, you're a purebred entrepreneur, right? I mean, the first time I met you in person, and you're telling me you were going to build this business, and I didn't have for a second a doubt that you were going to get there. True story, mate. Like, true story. I didn't have a second of doubt that you were going to be there. And it's interesting, like, that's a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
But now, like, when I see you showing up, won an award, you've won awards on YouTube, wherever it is, and you're showing up, I'm just like, he's just building this freaking wall.
Yeah.
You're always building the wall, brick by brick, step by step.
Yeah.
Something falls out of place.
Yeah.
You're picking it up, you're dusting it off, you're putting it back in its place, and off you go.
Yeah, and I think I just love doing it as well. I love building it. I love just attempt is something that I love, and that is what I'm in love with, rather than the recognition and then the awards and the money that we can potentially make. I think it's just the hustle is something that I really love.
It's the process, isn't it, man? Yeah, that's what I love too. I'm just like, I wake up because I want to build this thing.
Absolutely.
Choosing a uni is our current one. I just want to build it. Like, that's what makes me hungry.
I love that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it, and that's where we are at. Even at AIEC, trying to meet new people, and you introducing to people, and just like me introducing myself to people that I don't know. That is what is the learning experience. That's what we live for.
Someone who's listening along to this, like, what are you guys looking for? What do you need right now? So this is something that always strikes me when, whether you're working in an organization and you're trying to, deliver a project or achieve some results. We're a small business like you and me, and we're trying to build something. Yeah. There's always something that you need at a particular moment that's going to sort of take you up to the next level. Yeah. What is it that you need right now? So if there was someone listening along that could actually help out with that journey.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for asking that question. I really want to help more organization build really good content so that they can reach international students authentically. That is something that we're absolutely good at. We have reached millions of people. And when I say people, it's not a cat video that everybody's going to see. When we create content, it's only for international students or for the industry, and every single view that we get is from the industry as well. So that is where I want to take Internash. That I have seen a lot of people trying to spend huge amount of money on like Facebook ads, and which is great. I always support that. However, we can a step before. It's like creating really good content and creating that strategy that reaches international students, potential international students. That's what we are good at, Internash. And if we can help more and more organizations build their marketing strategy and help them with their marketing, that is something where we can add a lot of value. Actually,
let me ask you this.
You run a lot, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
Are you a runner?
I did my marathon.
Oh, he did too.
Like a few years back, but now I've transitioned to triathlons.
Dude, yeah, good on you.
Yeah.
How'd you get into running? Exam, one night, stress, you're like, I got to get
Or a
this
heartbreak.
Yeah. That's so true.
I actually, my first half marathon was 10 years back. So I did that in India. My mom was turning 50 and she had never ran. And she's like, I want to do something. And she's like, I'm going to do a half marathon. I was like, Mom, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I did half mara in like 2 hours 9 minutes or something, which is all right.
Fast. That's pretty fast.
Yeah, which is all right. Again, I'm like, 21 years old. So I did that, and that was the first time I understood what running can get you. And then whenever I wanted to clear my head, it's workout and sports, and running really, really helps.
That's the introvert thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think you and me
be.
both, mate. Like, I really feel that where I disconnect and recharge is when I get out in the bush. Give me 2 hours, like just 2 hours to run in the bush with nothing in my ears, nothing in my brain, and I'm like a human again.
Are you a trail runner?
I am, yeah.
Why do you like trail running more than...
I think it's because it's this balance between body, the physical side, but it's also brain. Like you've got to be paying attention where your feet are going.
Yeah.
You're watching branches coming, you're dodging, you're looking at the scenery. Very little, actually, but you are.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's this balance between body and brain, and I find it's just less intense on your body than road running.
Oh, interesting. I have always thought it's more intense.
Oh,
is
you
it
reckon?
not?
Yeah, I don't know. Like my osteo says it's really good for all your supportive muscles and your ligaments because you're kind of constantly moving and balancing and shifting your weight. Whereas road running is that more just kind of like pounding the pavement up and down,
or just the speed and stuff. Yeah, I haven't done trail running much. It's also because I'm just worried I'll twist my ankle or something. Like that is
next time in Sydney, mate. I'll take you out on my local trails. Yeah, we're going to do that.
I would love to do that. But yeah, so I'm actually got selected for Mumbai Marathon.
Oh, cool.
And I'm doing it in January 2025. It's like one of the top 10 races in the world. I think the best and the biggest in Asia. And I'm really excited. You have to it's similar to not at the level of Boston or New York or London, but still you have to submit your time. Recently I did half mara in Adelaide and my time was 1:55.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I submitted that. So that is something. But yeah, trail running is something that's on the list. I just haven't done it.
What do you miss from home?
Ooh, that's a great question, isn't it?
If I could wave a magic wand and rustle up anything from home, big or small.
Yeah, it goes back to the cultural difference that Indian people feel when they're abroad. And it's just different culture, right? How we grow up. I think this was actually a very deep conversation that I was having with a friend. And we were talking about how individual society and collective society work. So India is where everybody's in each other's business and it's not offensive, right? So, for example, imagine me just showing up at your doorstep. You're like, Dev, I get it, mate. We know each other, but what is this? Right? Whereas if you're in India, you grew up in India, and I randomly show up at your doorstep, you're like, oh, dude, come in, or whatever, right? It's just that the culture is slightly different, and I am very with new people. Obviously, we take time, but once we are in each other's inner circle, then I think that warmth is something that is very different. It's not that is better or not. It's just different, and it goes back to what we grow up with. For example, everybody who grown up in Australia, one thing that I've noticed is that people here, their idea of space is very different from rest of the world.
So true.
So, and that is how closely we stand or sit when we talk. And for example, if I'm from India, I'm never going to know your idea of space. And I was like, yo, why do you want me to shout? Why are you standing there? Come here. And it's things like this. And that just fascinates me so much. But yeah, what do I miss? I sometimes miss the warmth and the festivals. And that I cannot stress enough. It doesn't matter which country you're from, what your nationality is. It is an experience of lifetime to attend festivals in India. It is going to be overwhelming. You're going to question yourself why you're there. You're going to worry about your safety a little because, again, it goes back to idea of of my space, right? It's like you have never seen that many people in 1 square kilometer or 1 square meter. But it is an experience of the lifetime, and I encourage everyone to talk to an Indian person who's born in India and then go to India. That is the key. A lot of people are like, I'll figure it out. Sure you will. There is no doubt there. But if I come to Australia, I land in Sydney, I go and see Opera House, I fly to Melbourne, do 12 apostles, I go back to India, and I tell people I have done Australia. Is that really Australia?
Not really.
That's not Australia, right? And then I talk to you, and you're like, you know what? Come here, I'll take you to camping. Or I'll take you to that trail that is rarely, people don't usually go there, and it's your thing. Or just I'll take you to Outback and teach you about people who have lived on this land for 70,000 years. And that would be more Australian experience than visiting Opera House and going back to the country, right? And I can only do that if I talk to someone who's born here, who loves this country, who breathes this country, right? So you go to India, you're going to have a great experience. Similar thing, a lot of people land in Delhi. They're like, oh, I want to go and see Taj. So go to Agra. Then they're like, what's next? I'll go to Mumbai, which is literally similar to Sydney or Melbourne. Even the architect of Sydney and Mumbai is the same because Britishers. And then they are like, oh, cool, but I also want to do fun stuff. So they go to Goa, and that's it. And that is not India, So that's why I recommend people to talk to an Indian person who has traveled in India, born in India, and then visit India.
I must admit, for the longest time, I wasn't interested in going to India. And I think the reason for it was just this overwhelm.
Yeah.
Because it's massive. It's a massive country, just geographically.
Absolutely.
The number of people, the number of potential experiences. And for me, I guess I hadn't sort of figured out where my access point was to that. It just seemed beyond.
I am your access point.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And anybody who wants to go to India and you feel similar, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I am very passionate and I love India. I love everything about India, the good and the bad, because, when you look at me, even my accent, it's as Indian as it gets. So I will build a path that is safe and has the crazy experiences in a safe way and the good experiences.
I appreciate it, mate. I'll be taking you up on that one day. A little bit of a left turn, and maybe just to sort of get us towards the end of this conversation. But you're in the content space, and obviously one of the big things that's been shifting in the world in the last 18 months is this whole generative AI side of things. And I know a lot of people have questions about that. I'd love to get your take on where you see things going. So where generative AI fits into this kind of ecosystem of content, community, audience, value.
I love that question. I have thought about it a little because if we use AI correctly, it has never been easier to create content. And this goes back to, it has never been easier to create good content. Asking ChatGPT write a caption for me or write a LinkedIn post for me is the most basic thing that we can do. However, telling an AI more about ourselves, our audience, our company, and then taking AI's help in order to create content is something I highly recommend every company should do. We do with all our clients. It's not just, me sitting there thinking. Obviously, that's a big part of it, and the team thinking. However, we take help of AI and just try and make it easier and better for everybody involved to get better results. So I highly, highly recommend to all marketers out there to just learn more about AI and how you can utilize it the best way.
Taking that one step further, the other thing that you've done really well, I mean, I've seen you sort of from a distance doing this, going around the industry, is you're building this personal brand as well. And you're doing that on, obviously, via YouTube, but LinkedIn, other mechanisms.
Yeah.
And yet, once again, you're an introvert, dude.
Yeah.
Like, what about for that person who is saying to themselves, oh, well, I feel like I'd like to kind of do that, but it's not really me.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this. Before I was coming here in the morning, I was giving a pep talk to myself.
Love it.
It's like, hey, man, it's a new experience. You have never been to this conference. There are 1,800 people, but it's going to be good. And I put myself in this zone where, I'm going to meet few familiar faces. I'm going to meet new faces, and I'm just going to have a good time. So it's that thing, which is like, okay, I love to, even introverts love to hang out with their own people, right? Which is you, which is me. I think everybody, introvert or extrovert, they just love their own people. It's the ability to approach new people. That's where introvert and extrovert is different, and how much energy we usually have. So I just put myself in that zone, which is like, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do. And then that personality comes out. So even though, having introvert personality traits, I have now kind of built that extrovert. It's like, Dev is this here, but if you're going to come home, if you're going to have like a beer, just chilling, then it's going to be extremely calm, like very, just a chill environment. So that is what I try and do. And I think everybody out there I'm learning, so I'm not an expert in that space, but just telling ourselves what we want to see, like what is our expectations of us, is something that helps, and then we can try and achieve that, and in turn we are going to achieve the objective.
Yeah, I love that, man. Great advice. As you were speaking there, the thing that kind of struck me, and I've started doing this recently, but when I wake up in the morning, I say to myself, everybody's going to say yes to me today.
Oh, wow.
For everything.
I love it.
Isn't that great? Like, I picked that up on the Instagram reel.
That is great.
Instagram wisdom. And I tell you what, it shifts your mindset. So I'm thinking of you doing your power pose on waiting to come here.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing in the mornings, just being like, everyone's going to say yes to me today.
Everyone's going to say yes to me today. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm going to try that.
It still hasn't tipped me over to the point where I'm willing to ask for a discount on my coffee, but I'm getting close, Deb. I'm getting close.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for saying that.
Hey, mate, it's been amazing chatting with you, and I really love your story, the story of coming to Australia and just the hustle of like creating, driving value. And I'm just fascinated to see where this story goes in the next 5 or 10 years. And the one thing I'm certain of is that it's going to be an epic story to follow along.
Thank you.
So I'm really grateful for you joining the first part of your story, the very first part of the story.
There's going to be part 2 in a couple of years. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been following your journey and taking inspiration from it. And yeah, thanks for doing all the hard work that you're doing for the industry as well.
Great pleasure, mate. See you next time.
The Global Horizons podcast is brought to you by the Global Society, Australia's learning abroad support company. For about 10 years, the Global Society has been supporting Australian learning abroad teams with technology, training, consulting, strategy, marketing, you name it. We all know that learning abroad is time-consuming and complex, so if your team could use a little bit of extra support, reach out to the Global Society, globalsociety.com.au.
Today's episode was recorded on Garigal land in Sydney, and we pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Thank you. See you next time.